Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Melissa Green, a Technology Accessibility Specialist with the Center for Instructional Technologies Technology Accessibility Team. Our team works to ensure that all technology users, including those with disabilities, have a functional and accessible technology experience with the university's websites and the technologies we use for teaching, learning, and doing the business of the university. You can find more information about our efforts on our website, which is accessibility.ua.edu. Today's webinar is a demonstration session in which we'll look at general principles for creating accessible content with Microsoft Office products. We won't be able to look at every single aspect of creating accessible documents, presentations, and spreadsheets. We have more in-depth product-specific workshops and webinars for that, but you should leave today with a good understanding of basic principles for creating accessible content using Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook. A quick moment for housekeeping. This slide includes a picture of me. I have my webcam turned off, but I thought you might like to see who you're speaking with today. So hi, that's me. To improve audio quality, I've muted everyone by default, but when you want to speak, just click the microphone icon in the Zoom control bar to mute or unmute yourself. You can also choose to have your camera on or off, but please do mute your microphone when you're not speaking. When I'm talking or sharing my screen, please indicate in the chat box if you can't see or hear something, and you're welcome to use that chat box throughout to communicate with me and the other webinar participants. I may not be watching closely while I'm talking, but I will do my best to check in every once in a while. If I don't see your question or comment immediately, don't worry, I will come back to it at the end. This session is being recorded. I'll send you a link to that recording via email in the next few days, along with links to resources shared during this session. Some of those resources are handouts from Microsoft. I'm actually going to go ahead and paste links to those in the chat. I'll also be sharing these again via email, but I wanted to share them now in case you'd like to reference them during the session. With all that being said, we'll go ahead and jump in. Like the Microsoft Office spelling checker tells you about possible spelling errors, the accessibility checker in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Outlook on the web tells you about possible accessibility issues in your Office files. This tool is really the most valuable thing to work with when it comes to Microsoft Office and accessibility, so we kick things off by looking at it. The accessibility checker generates a report of issues that could make your Office content difficult for people with disabilities to understand. It also explains why you should fix these issues and goes about walking you through how to fix them. In newer versions of Office, you can access the accessibility checker via the Review tab, so right alongside the spelling and grammar checking tools. In older versions, including Office 2016, you can access the accessibility checker by going to File, Info, Check for Issues, Check Accessibility, and that's what's shown on this slide here. I'm pulling up a Word document now. This Word document includes some information about traditions at the University of Alabama. It has some accessibility issues, intentionally so. So if you're already spotting some things that are less than accessible about this document, you're on the right track. We're going to use this document to do a couple of different things, one of which is to look at how the accessibility checker works. So I'm going to run that checker now. I have Office 2016 for Windows, so there is no Check Accessibility button in the Review tab on the ribbon. So I'll follow these steps to open the accessibility checker. I'll go to File, and then Info, Check for Issues, Check Accessibility. And when I do that, the accessibility checker task pane appears in the right sidebar next to the content and shows the results of that accessibility inspection. To see information on why an issue is an issue and steps on how to fix it, Under inspection results, you want to select an error or a warning or a specific issue. The results appear under additional information down here at the bottom, and you're directed to the inaccessible content in your file. So after the accessibility checker inspects your content, it reports the inspection results and it breaks them into categories. We see a couple of those here: errors and warnings. So if the content in the file makes it very difficult or impossible for someone with a disability to use, the accessibility checker classifies it as an error. So this particular document has two types of errors: missing alt text and no header row specified. Those errors occur in multiple places. So the missing alt text error occurs in picture 2, picture 4, table, chart 6, and picture 3. And the no header row specified error occurs in a table. If we select one of the instances where the error occurs, we'll be taken to that location in the document. I'm going to do that for the table under no header row specified. I'm selecting that now. So I'm taken to that spot where the error is occurring. It's visually highlighted in the document. And then in the accessibility checker, at the bottom of that right sidebar below the inspection results, I get some specific information about this error. I'm told why fix. A table header row contains column headings that provide context and aid navigation of the data in the table. The accessibility checker results go on to say how to fix and walks through the specific steps of how to fix it. We'll look at this particular error in just a moment. But this is generally how this tool is used. You run it, you get your list of errors and warnings, you select each instance in which that error or warning occurs, and then follow the instructions at the bottom of the right sidebar to fix those. We first looked at errors. Another category of results that you'll see is warnings. This particular document has two types of warnings: unclear hyperlink text and objects not in line. The difference between errors and warnings is that errors are more serious. They make it very difficult or impossible for someone with a disability to access that content. Warnings indicate content that may be difficult for people with disabilities to understand. It's really something that you, as the document creator, need to look at each individual case and make a determination. You know, is this actually an issue? Is this something I can fix? Is this something that will have to be fixed when I export this document as a PDF, and so on. Sometimes you'll see an additional category of results. We don't see it here, but in addition to errors and warnings, there are sometimes tips. And that just appears when there's content in the document that people with disabilities can understand, but could perhaps be better organized or presented in a different way. You might see some tips about that. So my favorite thing about the accessibility checker is that it not only lists the errors and the warnings, it also indicates where the problem is and why the problem presents an accessibility barrier, and it also tells you how to fix it. So the accessibility checker isn't going to catch every single accessibility issue. No automated check can, but it's a great resource that I hope you will tell all your colleagues about when you finish this webinar and get back to work in the office. Most of the issues that present barriers to access, including those identified by the accessibility checker, can be prevented or fixed by following a few simple practices, which we'll look at now. You can enhance the accessibility of your Office content by using built-in styles and templates with fonts and colors that are easy to see. Microsoft actually offers a collection of templates that can help you make your content accessible to everyone. I'm opening up my internet browser. I'm on a page on the Microsoft Office website. I'll send you a link to this page that includes some information about accessible templates for Office. I'm scrolling down to a section on the page that is headed, "What makes these templates accessible?" And it talks about some of the features in the templates that make them more accessible to users with disabilities. So some of those things are better color contrast, so sufficient color between, or sufficient contrast between the foreground text color and the background color, meaningful alternative text, so text descriptions of images and other visual content. If the template includes visual content, there'll be alternative text included as well. Simple table structures. Screen reader users in particular sometimes have trouble with complex tables. So tables that have cells that are merged or split or have multiple rows of headers. These templates, if they include tables, have simple, more accessible table layouts. Larger font size, some additional guidance in terms of input messages for users of the templates, as well as some other features, kind of depending on which Office product you're using. So these accessible templates have a really solid base of features that make them accessible to users of all abilities. To find these templates, you can search for them on office.com. So actually on this page there's a link, or you could search in the search box on the site, accessible templates, or you can get to them from within the Office application. So I'm going to open up Excel now. I have an Excel spreadsheet, a blank Excel spreadsheet open on my monitor. I'm going to demonstrate how to search for accessible templates in an Office application here in Excel. So I'm going to the File menu in the ribbon at the top of the screen, and I'm creating a new spreadsheet by selecting New. In the Search for Online Templates box, I'm typing accessible to find accessible template files. I've typed the word accessible. I'm hitting Enter to run my search. And we get a decent amount of results here. Lots of different types of templates, whether it be a calendar, a budget, a timesheet, an invoice, and so on. Depending on what you're trying to do in Excel, one or more of these may be appropriate. Something that I've done that's made it easier for myself to find accessible templates that I like is to pin or bookmark what Excel or what Office calls the accessible template sampler. So a couple different things here. One is the ability to pin. So each template has, if you hover over it or bring it into focus, a push pin icon in the bottom right. You can select that to pin that template to your new document page. So whether it's a new Word document, new PowerPoint presentation, new Excel spreadsheet, if you pin it, it's always going to be there when you go to New. So what I have pinned is something called the Accessible Template Sampler. So I'm searching for Accessible Sampler now, and it's the first result, Accessible Excel Template Sampler. I'm going to pin that so it will always be available to me when I go to create a new Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to click on it once just to give you a preview of what these samplers are like. So the samplers bring together a collection of accessible templates available for the application that you're in. So in this case, Excel. So if I select Create, we can see sort of how the sampler works. A general introduction to it on the first sheet, then links to specific types of accessible templates on the other sheets. Links to calendar templates, links to invoice templates, budget, calculators, and so on. So a couple different ways to do it. You could search and find one that you particularly like and pin it. You could pin the sampler to allow you to easily go back to a collection of accessible templates. But either way, I encourage you to explore these collections of templates. If your department or program or area has a template that's sort of approved for use for business, and it's not one of these, you might think about using one of these as a basis for kind of reworking your internal template to ensure that it's accessible. Or otherwise, taking a look at the template that you're using, using the accessibility checker, using what you learned today and the resources I'm going to share to ensure that that template is accessible. That's a really impactful way to improve the accessibility of the Office files created in your area, is making sure the template that everyone is using is accessible. And I'm going to minimize Excel and just demonstrate that the same principle works in PowerPoint. So this is the PowerPoint presentation I'm using this morning. I have PowerPoint open. Let's say I wanted to create a new accessible PowerPoint presentation. I could go to File and then New, and then search for Accessible or Accessible Sampler, and find some things there. I'm actually not seeing, oh, here we go, Accessible PowerPoint Template Sampler. Pin that. So whether you find these templates on the Office website or are searching for them from within the application themselves, definitely a great resource for creating accessible Office content. Regardless of whether or not you use a template, you can enhance the accessibility of your PowerPoints, and I'm talking PowerPoint specifically right here, by using the built-in slide designs that contain placeholders for text, videos, pictures, clip art, and more. Built-in slide designs versus blank slides contain all of the formatting, such as theme colors, fonts, and effects. They can help you ensure your slides are accessible by using layouts that are designed so that the reading order is the same for people who see and people who use technology such as screen readers. So I'm going to demonstrate that process of using a built-in slide type. So let's say if I wanted to add a slide to this PowerPoint presentation that we're looking at this morning, I might go to Insert, New Slide, and what I want to do is choose one of these slide types: a title slide, a title and content, a section header, to content, comparison, and so on, as opposed to inserting a blank slide and then inserting a text box or other content containers. And again, that has to do with reading order. I'm going to insert, I'll do title and to content. What I mean by reading order is that when someone who can see reads a slide, they usually read things such as text or a picture in the order that the elements appear on the slide. So in this case, a visual user would likely read the title first, so any text provided in that click to add title placeholder, then the content on the left side of the slide, then the content on the right side of the slide. But a screen reader reads the elements of a slide in the order in which they were added to the slide, which could be pretty different from the order in which things appear visually. To make sure everyone reads the contents in the order that you intend, it's important to check the reading order. And you can do that in the selection pane. You'll use the selection pane to set the order in which the screen readers read the slide contents. So I'm going to do that by going to View, Arrange. So in the ribbon, the Home tab, Arrange, and then Selection pane. The selection pane opens in the right sidebar. The selection pane actually lists the objects on the slide in the reverse order. So when the screen reader reads this slide, it's going to read the objects from the bottom to the top. So it would read first the title, then content placeholder 2, then content placeholder 3. You can change this order if the reading order isn't correct, if it isn't logical, if it doesn't match the visual reading order. You can drag and drop items to reorder them, or you can cut and paste them to reorder them. But in this case, the reading order was correct out of the box because I used one of the built-in slide layouts. And that's why you're encouraged to do that. The reading order will be correct. Switching over to a Word document. This is the one that we ran the accessibility checker on. Built-in formatting also serves a similar purpose. It provides structure and it aids in navigation. In Word, headings and tables of contents really serve this purpose. They help folks, particularly folks who use assistive technology, navigate the document more easily and provide for easier searching in the document. So let's take a look at these built-in styles in Word. So this document is titled University of Alabama Traditions. You can tell that it's the title of the document if you're a visual user because the title is in larger text, so larger size font at the top of the page. It's in a heavier weighted font. And that's typically what we do to indicate the title of a document or a report, is set it off visually with larger font or font with styling such as italics or underlining. We might do similar things for the different sections of the document. So this document includes information about different types of traditions like football or $1 Million Band or school songs. Each of those headings, football, $1 Million Band, school songs, has some subheadings underneath. In the case of school songs, the subheadings are alma mater and yay Alabama. In the case of football, we've got subheadings, beginnings of football at Alabama, the Crimson Tide, and so on. And the way that we can tell that these are sort of the sections of the document, if we're a visual user, is we see, again, some differences in visual formatting. There's white space around the heading. It's a slightly larger font. It's italicized. But if you're not a visual user, this kind of visual formatting is not particularly helpful. What we need to do as document creators is, instead of using just visual formatting only, is to use these built-in styles within Word. So I have the Home tab open in the Word document. And in the styles group, where I'm hovering the cursor of my mouse right now, there's a number of different styles that are available. We have a title style. We have a heading 1 style, a heading 2 style. These styles need to be applied to this document in order for it to be accessible. Right now, they're not. If I select University of Alabama Traditions, the title of this document, it's formatted in the normal style. We can tell that because normal is what's selected in the styles group. If I select football, which actually serves as a heading, it should be styled as a heading 1, heading 2, or heading 3. Instead, it's styled as normal. So to fix that, we would select the text we want to style, in this case, the title of the document, University of Alabama Traditions, and then select the appropriate style from the styles group, such as title or heading 1. Now, some people are hesitant to use these styles because they change the visual appearance of the document. It is possible to define your own styles. You don't have to use the ones that are built into Microsoft Office. It's also possible to apply styles to a document that's already been formatted visually and not change how it looks at all. So I'm going to undo what I just did. We've got University of Alabama Traditions. It needs to be a title. Let's say I want this to look exactly the same, but I want it to be styled as a title. I could select that text with my mouse, right-click on the title style, and choose Update Title to match selection. And that's going to update the built-in title style in this document to match the text I selected. And I could do the same for the headings. I'm going to select football. The built-in heading level 1 for this particular style is going to change that font to blue and remove the underline. That may be fine with me. I could leave it as is. But if I want it to look the same yet have that style, I could right-click that heading level 1 and choose Update Heading 1 to match selection. And that would ensure that everything in the document that I designated as a heading had that same styling. So using those built-in styles is very impactful when it comes to providing easier navigation and use of a document. This is a before version of this particular document with a number of accessibility issues. I have the same document where those issues have been corrected. I'm bringing that up on the screen now. You know, it looks the same for the most part, with the exception of changing a color contrast issue here. But it has those built-in styles. Another thing those built-in styles allow you to do is offer up sort of an outline view of sorts that any user, those with disabilities or not, can use to more easily navigate the document. So this document now has headings. I can go to View and then Navigation pane. And in the left sidebar, I've got this really nice outline based on those headings. I can go directly to the portion of the document that's marked as a heading. So that's going to be a benefit for anyone, not just an assistive technology user. If you add headings to your document, you can also easily create a table of contents and insert it into the document. And that table of contents will even dynamically update as you add and remove pages in the document. I'll do that really quickly now. Let's say I want to insert a table of contents here under the opening paragraph in the document. So I'm putting the focus of my mouse cursor where I want to insert the table of contents. I'm going to References, Table of Contents, and then choosing one of the available automatic tables of contents. I'm just going to choose the first one. And that inserts a table of contents based on the styles in the document, based on those headings. If I were to add or remove content, I could update that table of contents and those page numbers would change automatically. So one of the things we often say about technology accessibility is that it's necessary for some but beneficial for all. I think using styles in Microsoft Word is a great illustration of this. You know, they're absolutely vital to someone who is using a screen reader to navigate your document, but they're also very beneficial to folks who want to navigate a very long document more efficiently, or for you as an author if you want to add a table of contents. So we just talked about the importance of using headings and tables of contents to make content easier to navigate. Slide titles in PowerPoint and sheet names in Excel can do the same. Switching back over to the editing view of this workshop PowerPoint we've been looking at this morning, there's a few different ways to add titles to your slides in PowerPoint. You can choose to create a new title slide by selecting New Slide and then choosing one of the slide layouts that includes a title placeholder, like Title and Content, which I just did. And then you would type in your slide title in the title placeholder, as I just did. You can also add a title to an existing slide by selecting that slide and then changing the layout to title. So for an existing slide, we've got it selected. In the slides group in the home tab, we would go to layout and change the layout to one that includes a title. Some presenters don't wish to have a title on their slide for aesthetic reasons, so don't want to have a visible title. You can put a title on a slide, but make it invisible using the selection pane in PowerPoint. So, for example, you can add a title to a slide for accessibility or sorting reasons, but keep the title hidden from view. I'm going to do that on this slide. I've typed in title as the title in the selection pane, which you can open up by going to the drawing group in the home tab and then choosing selection pane. You can have that title not show by selecting the eye icon to toggle on and off the visibility. So the title is necessary for accessibility, but you don't have to have it show visually if that doesn't sort of jive with your design choices. You can really see how beneficial these slide titles are to all users by going to View and selecting the outline view. Slides that have titles are easy to navigate directly to. We know what the slides are about. If the slide doesn't have a title, we may have no idea. For example, on slide 8 in this presentation, I haven't included a title. What's that about? Okay, it looks like I left that title off, for visual reasons. A more accessible design practice would have been to include a title but hide it from view. This is also a good illustration of why your slide title should be unique. Both slide 15 and 16 are titled Microsoft Learning Tools. What's the difference between the two? It's not apparent. If we select those, I can see that there's a video demonstrating Microsoft Learning Tools on slide 15, and slide 16 includes some text. A more accessible title would specify that. So I might say Microsoft Learning Tools video, or leave Microsoft Learning Tools and change the title of Microsoft Learning Tools to Microsoft Learning Tools Features. So every slide should have a title, and the titles should be unique. We shouldn't repeat the titles across multiple slides. Similar principle when working with Excel spreadsheets. I'm going to go back to a blank Excel spreadsheet. You'll want to give all of the sheet tabs unique names and remove blank sheets. So screen readers, the technology that's used by people who are blind or people who have low vision to access digital content. They read digital text aloud. Screen readers can also sometimes be used by folks with learning disabilities, or folks who prefer to learn or access information by hearing text read aloud while they're reading it visually. But for anyone who's using a screen reader, they're going to be hearing the names of the sheets in the Microsoft Excel workbook read aloud. So if the sheet names are left as the default, sheet 1, sheet 2, and so on, that's not particularly useful. So we need to change the names to give more information about what's found in that particular sheet. So we can make the spreadsheet easier to navigate by removing the blank sheets and giving each sheet a unique descriptive title. There's a number of different ways to do this. I usually do it by right-clicking on the name of the sheet and choosing rename. So instead of sheet 1, I would want to actually label what this contains. Let's say it was birthdays of my colleagues in CIT. So I would call that maybe CIT birthdays. Sheet 2, let's say this included favorite colors. CIT favorite colors. If there was an extra or blank sheet, I can enhance accessibility by removing it. So I could right-click on that and choose delete. So just something that the accessibility checker will prompt you to look at, but you as a human have to evaluate, is whether or not the titles of each sheet make sense. Whether they appear in a Word document, PowerPoint presentation, or Excel spreadsheet, it's important to ensure that the text for your hyperlinks is meaningful. You want the link text to make sense as standalone information, providing accurate information about the destination target. And this is because of the way that screen reader users sometimes encounter links. So, using a screen reader can kind of be like hearing an automated phone menu where you have to listen to all of the available choices before you make your selection. And if you've ever had to do that, you know that that's quite tedious. Most people don't prefer to access digital content that way. If I go to the ua.edu homepage, I don't want to have to read everything on the homepage before I arrive at the link to the campus map or the campus directory. If I'm looking for some specific information in a document, I want to visually scan it or search it and go directly to it. I don't want to have to listen to all of the other information in the document first. So screen reader users are no different, and will sometimes use shortcuts to enable them to access specific types of content within a document or a web page. One of these things is hyperlinks. So when a screen reader user is accessing a web page or document, they might use a keyboard shortcut, so a combination of keys on their keyboard, to bring up a list of links in the document or on the web page. This can make navigation much more simple. Think of my use case of going to ua.edu. If I know I'm looking for a link to something, I can skip all that other text and go directly to the link. So for that reason, because screen reader users may encounter links sort of divorced from the surrounding context, the names for those links need to be really clear. Another way that screen reader users will sometimes navigate digital content is by using the tab key to tab from element to element. Same thing. They might encounter a link that doesn't have any surrounding context. So that's why we want our links to have unique descriptive names rather than something like click here. I've encountered a number of web pages where the phrase click here appears 10, 15 times, but in every case it means something different. Click here for a calendar of events. Click here for a staff directory. Click here to register for our workshop. If the link text for all of those links is click here, it's not apparent how the first instance is different from the third, and so on. Let's look at a practical example of this in the Microsoft Word document. There's a couple different hyperlinks in this document. I'm scrolling down to the section on school songs, the entry on the alma mater. So there's a hyperlink here to a YouTube video of the $1 Million Band singing the alma mater. But the link text is not very accessible. The link text is the actual URL for the link. So a screen reader user who encountered this link would hear it read aloud as something like https://www.youtube.com/watch, and so on. That's not particularly accessible. A more accessible link text might be alma mater, or $1 Million Band performs the alma mater. In Microsoft Office, we can change this by right-clicking on a link and choosing Edit Hyperlink. The address is the same, so we want the address of the video to stay the same, but we could change the text to display to something like $1 Million Band performs the alma mater. It's a video. I like to indicate if I'm linking to a video. I might put video in parentheses or YouTube video in parentheses. But essentially, we want to make that link text screen reader friendly. So it's not reading out a string of numbers and letters, and it's really clear on what will happen if one clicks on the links. So that's a principle to apply, again, across Microsoft Office programs, whether it's a document or PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheet, and so on. The text should provide clear information about the link destination. Moving on to our next sort of impactful principle, that's the use of alternative text or alt text. Alternative text helps people who can't see the screen to understand what's important in images and other visuals. Screen readers speak the alternative text to describe images and other non-text content that users can't see. So all visual content in your Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, Outlook emails, and PowerPoint presentations should have alt text. This includes pictures, clip art, smart art graphics, shapes, groups, charts, embedded objects, ink, and videos. I'm going to switch back over to our Word document. So give me just a moment here. Sorry, I'm trying to grab a quick screenshot. Okay. Switching back over to our Word document here, taking a look at some instances of alt text. To add alt text to an image in the current version of Microsoft Office, most of us have installed on our work computers. One of the ways that we can start that process is by right-clicking on the image or object, then choosing Format. It may say Format Picture, it may say Format Chart, it may say Format Table, kind of depending on the object that we're working with. But we choose Format. In the Format dialog, choose Layout and Properties, and then expand the area labeled Alt Text. We would then enter a description of the image's content and function in the description box. Putting alt text in the description box will provide the best experience with most major screen readers. Content in the description box is converted to alt text when a PDF is exported from Word. There is an additional box here, Title. Unless you have a complex image, you really want to just enter text and description. You know it'll carry over into other programs. These two separate boxes are actually being merged into one in other versions of Word, which I'll show you a screenshot of in just a moment. But that's the process you follow to add a description of an image. So that was a picture. Let's take a look at another type of content, like a table. You would select that content, right-click on it. In this case, we go directly to Properties and then choose Alt Text, where we could type in a brief description of the contents. Here's a chart. Right-click, Format, go to Properties, and then access Alt Text. A couple different notes here. Sometimes images are purely decorative. For example, the case of this script A. In this particular context, I included the script A because I wanted to add some school colors. I wanted to make the document more visually interesting. This content really isn't conveying any sort of information or serving any kind of function. In this case, I would likely leave the alt text field blank in this version of Office. In newer versions of Office, which have the ability to do so, I would indicate that this is a decorative image. So just something to think about. The guideline I use to help me determine if I need to provide alt text or what the alt text should say is, why did I include this, or what was the purpose of including this? In this case, it's just kind of to look pretty, and in that case, I don't need alternate text. I'm pulling up the PowerPoint so I can show you a screenshot of how alt text works in Office 365. So the changes that come to Office 365 usually eventually trickle down to other versions of Office. So it's likely if you continue to use the traditional desktop version of Office that yours will look like this soon. Also, many areas of campus will soon be moving to Office 365, so I wanted to show you that this is going to get a little easier and more straightforward, in my opinion. So previously, one has to right-click on an object and then choose Format. So Format Picture, Format Chart, Format Table. In Office 365, the ability to edit alt text is available directly from the right-click menu, which is shown in a screenshot on the left side of the slide. So you can choose alt text. The alt text dialog opens, and there's one box to type a description in, and you get a prompt. How would you describe this object and its context to someone who's blind? 1 or 2 sentences recommended. So that's much more straightforward, in my opinion. It's easy to get to, and you get instructions telling you exactly what to do. A couple things that aren't present in the older versions that we can see in Office 365. There's a checkbox that you can check to mark an image as decorative. So I would do that in the case of that script A. And there's a feature where Office will attempt to generate a description for you. So you can select Generate a Description for Me, and it will use artificial intelligence to attempt to describe the image. You can then edit that description if it's not entirely accurate. So this is coming soon to Office 365, possibly to other versions of Office. I think it's going to make things a lot easier. Much more simple, more straightforward. Another impactful practice that you can apply is the use of color. So ensuring that color is not the only means of conveying information. To find instances of color coding, you can visually scan your document. People who are blind, have low vision, or have color vision deficiency or color blindness might miss out on meaning conveyed by particular colors. So there's a couple of examples of improper use of color in our traditions before document. The first appears here at the very beginning of the document, color contrast. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But I'm scrolling down to an instance in which color alone is used to convey meaning. So in the section about the $1 Million Band, there's a subsection titled Notable Halftime Shows that lists the titles of and dates of notable halftime shows with some information about them. So at the beginning of that section, we see the words shows with signature songs in red. And the first show in the list, the Southern Gospel Show, is in red font. So that's going to be useful to someone who can see red, or someone who can distinguish red from other colors relatively easily, but that's not particularly useful for someone who's unable to do those things. So instead of just using color to convey that information, we might do that in a different way. We might say Southern Gospel Show, the band debuted their signature song, Amazing Grace, or maybe have a table with some sort of indicator indicating which shows are those that include signature songs. So it's okay to use color, but we don't want to use color alone to convey meaning. We need to make sure that meaning is conveyed in an additional way. You also want to use sufficient contrast for text and background colors. So I'm scrolling back up to the beginning of this document. The introductory paragraph appears in gray font on a white background. It's pretty difficult to read. This would be especially difficult for someone with low vision or someone trying to read this content in bright sunlight. In order for the document to be accessible, we need to make sure there's a high level of contrast between the text color and the background color. Microsoft Office Accessibility Checker will look for insufficient color contrast, but since it only checks certain types of Office content, it really is best for you to manually review this as well. So how to look for this: you can visually scan for text in your document that's hard to read or distinguish it from the background. There are a couple of automated tools that we like that can help with checking for sufficient color contrast. I was checking to see if I included screenshots of those in the PowerPoint. I don't think I did, but I'll send you links to them. I'll pull one up now. It's the WebAIM Color Contrast Checker. So this is a great tool to use to check color contrast in your documents and in your online content. The way it works is you enter in the color codes for the foreground and background colors, and the checker will tell you whether that combination of colors meets web content accessibility guidelines. So in this case, we have a darker blue on a white background. It meets web content accessibility guidelines for sufficient contrast, and that's indicated with a pass indicator. So the word pass appears and it's styled in green. Let's try another combination just to illustrate. I'm typing in the web color code for a lighter shade of gray with a white background. This provides insufficient contrast, and now the checker indicates that it fails web content accessibility guidelines. If I had these colors in my document and got the fail result, the way I would use this tool to try to fix the problem would be to adjust the lightness slider to make that foreground color darker until I got a passing result. So as I start to move it till it's darker, I start slowly passing these guidelines. So instead of E, I might want to use 6E, 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 because that provides a sufficient level of contrast. This is the WebAIM Color Contrast Checker. Another one that our group sometimes use is made by a group called Paciello Group. It is also free. It works a little differently in that it's desktop software, so you can download and install it on your computer. You can enter in color codes, hex codes, RGB codes, some other color codes, or you can use an eyedropper to check color contrast, which is especially nice when you're working with things like Word documents and PowerPoint presentations. So whatever you use, whether it's a visual scan, whether it's one of these color contrast checkers, it's an important step to take to make sure that you have sufficient color contrast between the foreground color and the background color so that everyone can read the document. While it's not on our agenda for this session, I want to quickly introduce you to some learning tools built into Office. Microsoft Learning Tools aim to improve comprehension and encourage independent reading. I've provided some information about those in one of the links I provided, a handout about Microsoft Learning Tools. I'm going to send you in the follow-up email a link to this video. I don't want to take the time to show it now because I want to make sure we have time for questions about the content we did aim to cover today. But some of the features are things like the ability to speak to author content, so dictation function, things like immersive reading that will highlight the content that's currently being read and kind of dim the background content. A picture dictionary that will produce symbols for particular words. All of these things are freely available as part of Microsoft Office. So again, I'll be sending you more information so you can explore those on your own time, but I wanted to make you aware of them as sort of something else that can make your Office content more accessible. In this case, something that can be used by the end user. That's all I have. I'll stop the recording now to take your questions or discuss any thoughts that you have to share.